Tijuana, in the Mexican state of Baja California, is the world's busiest international border. Over 20 million people annually move through Tijuana as they cross between Mexico and California. 54% of the narcotics smuggled into the US by Mexican drug cartels come through Mexico's largest border town, and much of the city has been ravaged by organized crime.
A lot of these young kids, they just shoot them in the head, in front of other people too, and it doesn't matter what time.
Tijuana is also the primary destination for US deportees, people forcibly removed to their countries of origin due to immigration violations. How long a person has been in the United States makes no difference to deportation policy, and for those individuals who were taken into America as children, deportation to Mexico is often their first experience of the country.
Mexicans would look at me like your accent, your way of speaking Spanish. You're a Mexican American, you're a Chicano, I'm a Mexican.
Cast into a nation where they are seen as outsiders, torn from their families, and banned from the country they think of as their own, many deportees choose to remain on the border, individuals left in limbo, described by Tijuana natives as from neither here nor there.
Qué triste fue decirnos adiós cuando nos adorábamos más, hasta la golondrina emigró.
Last year, US Immigration and Customs Enforcement deported 316,000 people. 1/3 of these cases were classified as interior removals, individuals apprehended while living inside the United States, rather than in the act of illegally crossing the border. In the past 5 years, the US has conducted 600,000 deportations into Baja California. 92% of these individuals have come directly from federal prisons. Tijuana receives on average 200 deportees daily, 36% of whom choose to remain in the city. Most of these individuals, despite being born in Mexico, grew up in the United States after crossing the border illegally as children with their parents.
I was a month old, I basically was raised, and basically raised in the U.S. For a moment, I thought I was a U.S. citizen myself, an American. It was like feeling like an outsider in your own land. I don't know. It was like feeling like a tourist in your hometown.
Following deportation, many claim that Mexico has nothing for them and choose instead to remain on the border, living closer to the lives and families they left behind.
I feel that the farther I am from the borderline, that I'm never going back. Yes, I'm Mexican, I'm Hispanic, but everything I know I've learned in California, the United States. I got my dad in Guadalajara. My parents separated, my dad's in Guadalajara, but I don't even go and visit him.
The deportees also face problems with their legal status in Mexico. Having lived away from their country of birth for most of their lives, few are registered to work, and many have trouble attaining even a birth certificate. Rosario Losada heads up the Tijuana government's program to help these deportees begin rebuilding their lives.
La persona dice llamarse Juan Pérez, pero realmente Juan Pérez no tiene un registro de vida en México porque no.
Let's imagine a deportee arrives whose name is Juan Pérez. This Juan Pérez was never registered here and therefore has no official registration in Mexico. legally, he's not anyone. He knows he's got family in Guadalajara, but he's never met them. He's got problems with the language because he barely speaks Spanish. He's got no document because he was never registered at birth. So he's not from Mexico, nor is he from the United States.
While Tijuana's infrastructure for dealing with this enormous influx of deportees has improved in recent years, the authorities nevertheless advise the new arrivals not to remain on the border.
Sería bueno que se fuera, pero realmente si la vamos a mandar a un lugar donde tenga familia.
It's best for this person to leave Tijuana, but always to a place where they have family. For many, it makes more sense to remain as close to their families in the United States as possible.
For those who are left behind, they face the challenge of rebuilding their lives in one of Mexico's most hostile environments. Help is at hand for the deportees. The city's Casa del Migrante, originally intended for migrants heading for the border, now finds the majority of its visitors are the deported. It's run by Father Pat Murphy.
They arrive here, they get deported. The vast majority get deported after 9 o'clock at night. It's dark, it's in a strange city. So you come here, you have a place of safety. At least you don't have to worry where I'm going to sleep, what I'm going to eat. At least for the time being, I'm safe. It's kind of like starting your life all over in a sense. And so people arrive here are very vulnerable. You know, the slightest little thing, and boy, they can just lose all sorts of hope.
The Casa offers not only shelter to deportees, but also legal advice, social work, psychiatry, medical and dental care. The Casa allows visitors up to 2 weeks of hospitality, after which they are advised to leave Tijuana. Those who don't, left without work and shelter, end up in the poorest areas, where drugs and violence are a serious issue. The Padre Chava Soup Kitchen, located in the Zona Norte, a crime-ridden district of Tijuana where many of the deported now live, offers a free daily breakfast as well as refuge for recent arrivals. Tijuana's deported community has been attending for years, and Padre Chava has become a beacon of hope in a violent reality for many of the deported. Father Oscar Torres runs the soup kitchen with the help of volunteers and says that depression and other psychological effects of deportation are the greatest obstacles that the newly arrived deportee must overcome.
Los trabajos que se dedicaban en los Estados Unidos.
Many of the deportees were at manager level in the United States, but when they arrive here, they're nothing. That is a huge shock, not only in terms of culture, but also in terms of self-worth.
Peligro de la vulnerabilidad psicológica.
The psychological vulnerability that these people arrive with can lead to a massive downward spiral with seemingly no end. It's this downward spiral that makes it very easy to find drugs. To arrive in a place like the Zona Norte, where crime and drug use is rife, is an extremely difficult situation for many of these people, and unfortunately, many find themselves turning to crime. Drugs are a serious problem in Tijuana, and the Zona Norte, where the Padre Chava Soup Kitchen is located, and where many of the deported end up living, is narcotics central.
Salgo a la calle, bronceado de la casa. Ayer me escapé la plancha, me fumé los ahorros de mi vieja. Quiero estacionar el coche, pero el diablo no me deja. Por pegarme hasta fiesta, los que me llevaban bien, mi presencia les apesta.
A stone's throw from the US border, the once peaceful Tijuana district of Zona Norte has been transformed into a crime-ridden hellhole by the drug cartels.
A lot of drugs. A lot of drugs. You just walk down the street and you see that.
Yeah.
You know, you walk down the street and you see people shooting up heroin.
It's the most inexpensive district of the city, and deportees who find themselves without work are often forced to live here, often in refuges where drug abuse is rife.
They just get sucked up in here. Like Tijuana, seriously, will suck you dry.
Rompí la vitrina de otro establecimiento, me interné en el Santa Fe y duré una semana corta con las putas fumando bazucas, severos conciertos.
This is one of the more insalubrious areas of Tijuana. It's in a colonia or a district of the city where a vast amount of the deported are now living. So this is one of the shelters. They charge $1 a night, but they don't discriminate between drug users, people carrying drugs, drug dealers, or criminals of any sort. If you have $1, you can stay here. So if you've just arrived in Tijuana, deported from the United States, you don't know where to go, this is the first place you're going to come. And even if your intentions are the best to make a new life for yourself here in Mexico, you're still going to be associating with not particularly salubrious characters. And that's one of the reasons that so many deported people here fall into these problems, because places like this, there's no real infrastructure for them to get back on their feet. After being deported, Israel Inosa fell into drug abuse and crime. Since his recovery, he has started working at a deportee refuge in the Zona Norte, aiming to help people avoid mistakes that he made.
This is the worst of the worst. It is one of the biggest mistakes if you come and try to live in this place, in this area right here in Tijuana. Because that's where everything happens.
After dark, the neighborhood takes on a very different aspect.
Es una zona conflictiva.
It's a very dangerous district. There are a lot of people in bad situations, drug addicts, criminals just looking for ways to survive, robbing, killing, whatever they can.
Vas pa'l cuero, decía la segunda mía. Vas pa'l cuero, fúmese lo breve quiero. Vas pa'l cuero, hasta que le todo el dinero.
Yeah, majority of deportees end up using drugs. I'd say 60%, 60 to 70% of the people in here in this area use some kind of drug. That's how bad it is.
I got into a point that I was injecting myself heroin with methamphetamine and tequila instead of water. It was really bad. I didn't want to think. I didn't want to feel anything.
They start using drugs, then they become addicts, then they start turning to crime and are forced to stay here.
When you become desperate, you know, that's when you're, that's when it's very easy to commit a crime. You got two choices here. One choice is if you want to be a screw up, be a junkie, you could be a junkie, or you can live like myself. I sell pizza for a living. That's how I support myself. That's how I eat. Goes up and everything. It's not a good job, but better than stealing and selling drugs. Other than that.
It's a war zone. Anybody that's like Mexican American, that's raised in the States, that gets put here, they're like lost. A lot of these young kids, they just shoot them in the head, in front of other people too, and it doesn't matter what time. Many times, I've even wanted to go and punch a cop or something, get put back in prison. It's been that bad here.
Darles ayuda si se pueden regresar a sus tierras de donde vienen.
We have to help them get back to their original towns. It's better than being here. They should be with their families in Mexico rather than living in false hopes of returning to the United States.
Despite the dangers, 36% of the deportees who arrive in Tijuana choose to stay, many with the intention of returning by any means necessary to the United States. For many deportees, however, lifelong deportation from the United States is an unacceptable situation. Unable to enter the US legally, they turn to coyotes, individuals who charge anywhere from $5,000 to $12,000 to move people into the United States. While Tijuana itself is separated by a triple fence and 24-hour vigilance from the US, other parts of the border are less protected. This here is the original wall which was put up by the United States along the US-Mexico border in order to originally try and keep out those first immigrants. As you can see, it's not a particularly imposing barrier. It's perhaps 10 feet tall, but obviously with the help of a few friends it wouldn't be hard to get over. But if you just come with me here, it's at this point that the wall simply ends. This is Mexico, and this is the United States. And from this point until about 30 kilometers in that direction, where you find the town of Tecate, the only physical barrier that is stopping these migrants from crossing into the United States is this very rugged terrain. Obviously you can see here behind me that it's very mountainous. So for those deportees who are trying to make their way back into the US illegally, it will be from this area until around 30 kilometers that way that they're trying to do this, usually under the shroud of darkness. But this isn't made any easier by the fact that the US have constant helicopter patrols with thermal imaging cameras and other very sensitive, very advanced technology in order to stop these people. But it's certainly their best chance at getting back into the United States without a passport. Jumping the border, however, is a dangerous business. The coyotes are now controlled by the drug cartels, and for many, it seems kidnap is a more profitable endeavor. Alejandro Martinez, a recent deportee, paid $5,000 to a coyote in order to be returned to his family in the United States. Instead, he ended up kidnapped.
I left to a hotel in false promises that I was going to get crossed across the border. Once I got there, they took everything out of my pockets. They took my phone, they took everything. Told me I was not to go near the windows, near the doors. I had to be sitting down. After 2 days, they asked my family for $2,000. Family, scared that something was going to happen to me, drove from San Bernardino, California, all the way to Mexicali, paid them $2,000. My mom, my dad were crying. They told me that it didn't sound right, that something was wrong. As soon as they let their guard down a little bit, I seen the gate open and I jumped the gate. I took off running. Now I'm back here in Tijuana, awaiting, trying to hopefully get a job.
Not only does crossing illegally have its risks on the Mexican side, it also carries heavy legal implications in the United States. Alejandra Martinez is the lawyer at Casa del Migrante and always advises her clients never to try crossing illegally.
Si ya fueron una vez deportados,
if they have already been deported once and are caught for re-entering, that can mean up to 20 years in prison. Each time they cross illegally into the US, it takes their chance of re-entering officially less. Once deported, their chances of making it back are very small indeed.
Yet the idea of life on the other side still attracts over 200,000 people annually to try and cross the border.
We've been on the run, driving in the sun, looking out for number one. California, here we come, right back where we started from.
Lupita Reyes is from the crime-ravaged Mexican state of Sonora. She came to Los Angeles 3 years ago and has lived here without documentation ever since. Despite leaving her young daughter behind in Mexico, she says life is better in California.
Más seguridad.
I feel a lot safe here. In Mexico, the danger is very real.
While here I feel that I can come and go as I please. I've had to do jobs that few Americans want to do, but on the whole I feel the quality of life is better here than where I'm from.
She says deportation doesn't frighten her.
Exacto. Si andas bien, te va a ir bien.
I'm not doing anything wrong here. I don't break the law and I play by the American rules. As long as you aren't hurting anybody else, then the authorities aren't that interested in deporting you.
I invite people to come to the United States, but for the right reasons.
San Diego deportation defense attorney Edward Haase tells a similar story.
Most recently, though, I believe that they're being more aggressive with those that have committed crimes, those that are habitual immigration violators. I believe they've stepped up the efforts to collect them and get them out of the country. But if somebody gets picked up for a petty theft or something like that, they're being less aggressive.
¿Sabes lo que dicen por ahí? Pobre ruiseñor, ¿dónde ha caído? Dicen que estoy ciego por tu amor y que tú juegas conmigo. No te pido cuentas.
Yet ejection from the US doesn't just cause suffering in Tijuana. It also affects the people they have left behind.
The tearing apart of families. That, from day one, from 1996 forward, that's always been the biggest impact that I've seen, is just how it affects families. If it just affected that one person, I could almost condone it. However, it affects the entire family.
El que nadie haya querido, que a mí no me importa, no me basta con un poco de tu amor.
They don't see the damage they're doing. You know, they uproot a family member. Dad gets deported. How will that affect uprooting the breadwinner of the family to leave the kids and mom behind? I can only imagine in 15 years we're going to bear the brunt of the psychological counseling that these kids are going to have to, because dad left them. You know, they don't understand that he was deported. When you're 5 years old, dad left us, you know.
Many authorities are calling for immigration reform to be more understanding of a person's cultural identity, but when such changes are coming, they have little idea.
There's going to have to be some reform, whatever shape it takes. The government needs to stand by it and enforce the laws that are on the books. Keeping families together, I think, should really be the primary focus.
Leaving out the human factor in this whole, that these aren't just numbers, these are real people with real lives and real families. There's somebody who's just like you and me, they're just trying to get along. They have some gifts and talents, so can't we find a way to welcome them, you know, without fear, and get to know them?
Con lo que tengas guardado, con lo que hayas olvidado.